The city was a ruin, a ghost of its former self. Skyscrapers lay in skeletal ruins, their twisted metal frames barely standing against the ravages of time. Once, these streets had been alive with the pulse of progress, but now they were just a battleground. Jason Riggs moved through the crumbling landscape, silent as a shadow, a predator in a world of scavengers. He had been tracking his target for days, an intergalactic smuggler who thought Earth was an easy hiding place. They always did. Earth was the last frontier, or relic of a forgotten past. To the galaxy's elite bounty hunters, it was a joke. But they didn't know Earth like he did. The wind howled through the empty streets, carrying the scent of burnt debris and decay. Jason's boots barely made a sound on the cracked pavement as he crouched low, his eyes scanning the surroundings. He could feel it, the faint tremor of footsteps in the distance, the telltale signs of someone trying to blend in. He'd seen this before. The smuggler's crew wasn't far behind. 4 of them, armed to the teeth, all underestimating the terrain, all underestimating him. Jason knew that as soon as they entered his domain, the hunt would be over. The only question left was how long it would take before they realized they were the prey. The faint clatter of boots echoed off the walls of a nearby building. Jason's heart rate didn't rise. It never did. He was calm, focused, a machine honed by years of survival. The bounty hunters would expect a confrontation, but not like this. He checked his pulse weapon, the sleek, compact piece of technology humming with energy. It was quiet, efficient. Just like him. A voice cracked through the comms in his earpiece, smooth and dispassionate, the voice of his informant, a former criminal who owed Jason a favor. "They're close, Riggs. I've got a lock on them. They'll be passing through the old tram station in 2 minutes." Jason's lips twitched into the faintest smile. The trap was set. He didn't reply, focusing instead on the noise growing louder. The bounty hunters were nearing the tram station, their steps syncopated, unaware of the danger that lay ahead. He had studied their movements for hours, anticipating their every misstep. They thought they were here for an easy score. Jason stood up, his movements fluid, and stepped into the alleyway that led to the abandoned tram station. The cracked windows and rusted rail tracks had seen better days, but it was perfect. The perfect kill zone. From the corner of his eye, he spotted a figure, a blur of movement in the dim light. A bounty hunter had broken away from the group, headed toward a back exit. Jason was already 2 steps ahead. He moved swiftly, a shadow in pursuit of a shadow. The bounty hunter heard him too late. A sharp thunk echoed through the alley, followed by the soft thud of the body hitting the ground. Jason was already gone before the man hit the pavement, not waiting to confirm his kill. That was the thing about him, Jason was always on the move, always 1 step ahead. The remaining 3 bounty hunters were closing in on the station. Jason could hear them clearly now, their voices tinged with impatience. "You think he's really here?" One of them, a woman, spoke, her tone filled with frustration. The second, a bulky figure, scoffed. "Of course he's here. This is where the tracker led us." Jason's eyes narrowed as he crouched low, slipping into a shadowed corner. They were getting close. His mind moved like a predator's, calculating. The first 2 would pass by him without even realizing it, not until it was too late. The third, however, was more cautious. He had been the most observant of the group. Jason's hand rested on the pulse weapon. He was ready. The trap would be sprung in seconds. From his hiding spot, Jason watched as the 3 hunters entered the tram station, their eyes scanning the surroundings. The woman looked up, instinctively sensing something wasn't right, but Jason was already on them. He shot first. A flash of blue light erupted from his weapon, striking the man in front square in the chest. His body jerked back, then crumpled to the ground, unconscious before he hit the floor. The woman shouted, reaching for her own weapon, but Jason was faster. He darted out from his hiding spot, moving in one fluid motion, and knocked her gun from her hand before she could fire. He twisted her arm, locking it in place, and shoved her into the nearest pillar. She gasped, struggling against his grip, but it was no use. "You're not getting out of this alive," Jason whispered, his voice cold and lethal. The last hunter, the one who had been on edge, turned in time to see his companions fall. His eyes widened in disbelief as Jason closed the distance between them in seconds. "You're the Boogeyman," the man said, voice trembling with a mixture of fear and awe. Jason didn't respond. He didn't need to. The final bounty hunter was dead before he had a chance to raise his weapon. Jason stood over the fallen bodies, breathing evenly, his gaze sharp as he surveyed the carnage. His informant's voice crackled in his earpiece. "Riggs, they're all down, huh? Nice work. But this is just the beginning." Jason's lips curled slightly into something that wasn't quite a smile. "They thought they were hunting me. But they didn't realize, they were already dead the moment they set foot on this planet." As the faint sounds of approaching ships filled the air, Jason turned and disappeared into the shadows, blending into the night as the wind howled around him. Earth's criminals would soon learn that the Boogeyman wasn't just a myth. He was the nightmare that would haunt their every step. And Zara 7's crew? They were next. The harsh, alien atmosphere of Earth's surface smelled of rust, decay, and lost promises. Zara 7's boots made a sharp clack on the cracked pavement as she stepped out of the ship. The others followed in silence, the hum of their gravity boots the only sound breaking the stillness of the ruined city. She surveyed the landscape, her eyes narrowing at the endless horizon of destruction. Earth's surface was a mess, a filthy, chaotic slum of forgotten technology and broken dreams. Even for a bounty hunter who'd seen the depths of the galaxy's underbelly, Earth felt like a tomb. "Welcome to the armpit of the galaxy," muttered Drax, a bulky mercenary, his voice dripping with disdain. His hand rested on the massive plasma rifle slung across his chest. "I don't need a tour," Zara snapped, her voice crisp. "Just get your gear ready. We've got work to do." Her crew, Drax, the quiet but deadly Shar, and Sarah, the tech specialist, had been handpicked for this mission. They were the best in the business, and they had a reputation for taking down the most dangerous prey in the galaxy. But Earth had never been part of their calculations. The locals thought the bounty hunters were here for them. What they didn't know was they were the ones being hunted. As the ship's engines powered down with a low, menacing hum, Zara pulled up her wrist interface and brought up the map of their target's last known location. Her eyes flickered with impatience. She had been hunting bounties for years, stalking criminals across moons and planets, and Earth's reputation for being a lawless backwater had always amused her. It was just a rumor. Until now. Jason Riggs. The Boogeyman. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was more than just another human thug trying to make a name for himself. The reports were inconsistent, all the information about him fragmented and contradictory. Some called him a myth, a ghost of the streets. Others said he was a single man capable of taking down entire squads of galactic bounty hunters. Either way, they were here to find out. Zara activated her comlink. "Status report, Sarah." The voice of her tech specialist crackled through her earpiece. "Tracking the signals. Looks like he's still in the sector. No unusual readings yet. I'll need to tap into their comm grid to get better intel." "Do it," Zara ordered. "The last thing we need is to be walking into a trap." She turned to Shar, who was already scanning the skyline with his long-range optics. He was silent, his expression unreadable, but Zara knew he had already assessed their surroundings and found them wanting. There was nothing here but decay. "Eyes on the street," she said, locking her gaze with him. "We move in 20 minutes. Riggs is here somewhere, and he's playing games with us." Drax grunted. "Let him play. We're here for the payday, not a street fight." Zara didn't respond. She had worked with men like Drax before, brutes who were more interested in blowing things up than following strategy. But Jason Riggs was no ordinary man, and she would be damned if she underestimated him like so many others had. "Zara," Sarah's voice cut through the tension. "I've got something." Zara looked back at her team. "What have you got?" Sarah paused, and Zara could hear the familiar click of her fingers on the interface as she scrolled through data. It's Riggs. He's taken down 2 bounty hunters in the last 12 hours, both well-trained, both military. And there's a message. Zara's eyes narrowed. What kind of message? A warning, Sarah replied. It's not for us directly, but it's clear enough. The Boogeyman's domain. Leave now or die. A cold shiver crawled up Zara's spine. She had dealt with criminals who sent threats before, but there was something about this that felt different. It wasn't just the words, it was the certainty behind them. Whoever this Riggs was, he had control. He was playing a game, and he was winning. Pull up the location, Zara commanded. We go after him now. No more waiting. They moved swiftly through the dilapidated city streets, their steps synchronized, their weapons ready. Every sound, every flicker of movement, every shift in the wind made Zara's senses tingle. She had faced down predators in the harshest environments, but Earth felt raw in a way she couldn't explain. There was a tension in the air that didn't belong. As they entered an old industrial zone, Zara's heart rate steadied. The data stream from Sarah indicated they were getting close to Riggs's last known location. Eyes sharp, Zara ordered. He'll be expecting us. Drax snorted. The guy's a ghost. You can't expect me to. His words were cut off as the sound of shuffling feet echoed from a nearby alley. All 4 of them froze. Zara's hand shot out, signaling for silence. The air seemed to freeze in the seconds that followed. Then came the faintest rustle, too deliberate to be a coincidence. He's here, Shar whispered, his voice low. Zara's eyes darted around, scanning the environment for any sign of movement. The alleyway in front of them was dark, the only light coming from a flickering overhead lamp. Her instincts screamed at her. Something wasn't right. The alley was empty. Then, in a flash, a figure appeared in the darkness, a blur of motion so fast it made Zara blink twice to make sure she wasn't imagining it. There he was. Jason Riggs. He stood in the alleyway, his dark eyes catching the flicker of the dim light above. There was no fear in his gaze, only a cold, calculating focus. His expression was blank, almost bored, as if he were watching a slow-moving parade. Zara's hand moved instinctively to her blaster, her team following suit, but she didn't fire. Not yet. Jason's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. You must be the bounty hunters. You must be the Boogeyman, Zara replied, her voice cold. Jason tilted his head, studying her. Boogeyman? He chuckled, a sound that sent a chill through the air. No. Just someone who knows how to survive. Your days of survival are over, Zara said. Surrender now, and I'll make it quick. Jason didn't flinch. He didn't move a muscle. He simply stood there, watching them. You think you're the hunter, he said softly, his voice like steel. You've already lost. A deadly silence hung between them. Then, without warning, Jason vanished into the shadows, moving so fast that Zara barely registered the motion. She barked orders to her crew, but before they could react, the sound of footsteps began echoing from all directions. The hunt had begun. Zara's heart pounded as the first echo of Jason Riggs's footsteps faded into the dim corridor ahead. She snapped her comm link to her mouth. Sarah, give me a readout on his position. Where the hell did he go? Sarah's voice came through, clipped and frantic. I'm tracking, but there's too much interference in the area, he's using the shadows. No direct path, he's doubling back. Zara cursed under her breath. Shar, always the quiet one, scanned the area with his optics, and Drax hefted his massive plasma rifle, his grip tightening in anticipation. He wasn't fond of being toyed with, and the feeling was mutual. We need to move, now, Zara said, motioning for them to advance. She wasn't about to let Riggs control the pace of the hunt. They were the ones with the advantage here, they had the numbers, the tech, and the firepower. But Earth? Earth was a place of shadows, and Jason Riggs? He was the shadow in which they now found themselves drowning. The group moved swiftly through the industrial complex, a maze of abandoned warehouses and half-collapsed structures. Their boots were muffled against the cracked concrete, but Zara could feel the hairs on the back of her neck rise as the silence stretched. It was too quiet, unnaturally still. The last time she'd felt like this, she'd been in a jungle, surrounded by predators who knew the terrain better than she did. They had all but disappeared into the environment. Just like Riggs. "Talk to me, Sarah. Do we have eyes on him yet?" Zara's tone was sharp, the kind that cut through the growing tension in the air. "He's somewhere ahead," Sarah replied, the frustration clear in her voice. "But his signal keeps flickering in and out. He's moving too fast, and it's—" Before she could finish, a loud crash rang out from the far side of the complex. Zara whirled, her pulse quickening. That wasn't just a random noise. It was a distraction, deliberate, designed to pull their attention away from where he really was. "Stay sharp," Zara ordered. "He's playing games." Drax muttered, "I'll put a stop to that real quick." Char's sharp voice cut through their growing unease. "He's setting traps. We're walking into something, he's drawing us in." Zara's gaze flicked to the others. "No one goes off alone. Stick together, but keep your spacing. We play this smart." The group moved in closer formation, the tension thick in the air. Zara was a hunter by nature, but Riggs had a different kind of savagery. He wasn't in this for the payout. He was playing a longer game, testing them, waiting for them to slip. And that's when she heard it, a faint shift in the air, a barely audible whisper of movement. Jason Riggs was close. Without warning, something heavy slammed into Drax's side, sending him stumbling. The big mercenary barely managed to stay upright, his plasma rifle firing off a shot into the darkness, but it missed. "Damn it!" Drax yelled, recovering his stance. Zara's eyes darted to the shadows. "Riggs!" The sound of light footsteps danced across the concrete. It was a taunt, a reminder that they were still the prey, despite all their gear and weaponry. Then came the voice, low and chilling, echoing from all directions. "You think you can outsmart me?" Jason's voice oozed with dark amusement. "You've been in the game too long to believe you're the only one who knows how to hunt." Zara's gaze flicked to the others. Char was scanning the shadows, his body tensed and ready, but even he was struggling to pinpoint where the attack would come from. "This isn't a game, Riggs," Zara called out. "You don't have to die today. Surrender, and we'll make it quick." Jason's laughter sliced through the air, mocking her offer. "Die? You misunderstand me. You think this is about you or your team? It's about Earth. You're trespassing." Zara gritted her teeth, anger bubbling up, but she kept her focus. "I don't care about your vendetta. We're taking you in, dead or alive." Her words had barely left her mouth when the ground beneath them exploded in a cascade of dirt and concrete. Drax stumbled back, a low growl escaping his throat, while Zara and Char instinctively took cover, pressing their backs against the nearest crumbling wall. The explosion had come from beneath them, rigged, timed perfectly to catch them off guard. Then, another voice, cold and dark, drifted through the air. "Do you hear that?" Riggs's voice was like a death knell. "The sound of your own fear?" Zara clenched her jaw. Riggs wasn't just playing a game, he was toying with them, breaking them down piece by piece. He knew exactly how to unnerve them. He was faster, smarter, and more ruthless than any of them had anticipated. "Don't let him get to you," Char muttered, his voice grim. "Focus. Stay calm." Zara nodded, her breath steadying. She had been in worse situations before, had been outnumbered and outgunned, but had always found a way to come out on top. This wouldn't be any different. "Sarah, what's his position now?" Zara asked, her voice sharp. "I've got a weak signal, he's circling around your right," Sarah responded. "But, wait, there's a power surge coming from the old reactor nearby. He might be setting something up there." Zara's mind clicked into overdrive. She knew what that meant. The old reactor was the heart of this place, the power that ran everything. If Riggs had control of it, they were at his mercy. "We need to get to the reactor," Zara said. "Move out, now!" The four of them sprinted toward the reactor's location, their movements tense but determined. They couldn't afford to waste time. Riggs was closing in, and the longer they played his game, the harder it would be to find him before he found them. As they approached the reactor, the lights flickered, casting long shadows across the ruined building. The power was unstable, and the air smelled faintly of ozone and burnt circuits. They were getting close now. Zara could feel it, the final piece of the puzzle clicking into place. But just as they reached the entrance, the ground shook again. A massive explosion rocked the building, throwing them off their feet. Zara barely managed to catch herself on the edge of the wreckage. She looked up, her heart pounding. Riggs had won this round. The reactor was in his hands. And now, there was no escape. The explosion had left them disoriented, the acrid smoke filling their lungs as debris rained down around them. Zara struggled to push herself up from the twisted metal of the wreckage. Her left arm burned with the strain, but she didn't have time to assess the damage. Riggs was still out there, and this was his domain now. "Sarah, Drax, Shar, report!" Zara shouted, her voice hoarse. She could barely see through the haze, but she needed to know they were still in fighting condition. Sarah's voice crackled in her earpiece, strained but clear. "I'm good. The shockwave threw me back, but I've got a fix on Riggs. He's heading toward the reactor's core. I can't track him much longer, he's jamming the signals." "Damn it," Zara muttered under her breath. She swiveled her head to the right, catching a glimpse of Shar pulling himself free from a pile of twisted metal. His uniform was singed, his face smeared with dirt and blood, but his eyes were sharp. "I'm fine," Shar growled, as he dusted off his jacket. "But I don't know how much longer we can keep up. He's got the advantage. He's already 3 steps ahead." "Not for long," Zara snapped, standing up straight. She adjusted the blaster at her side, scanning the area around them. The reactor's structure loomed ahead, its once pristine exterior now cracked and smoldering from the earlier explosion. Riggs had taken control of their only way out. She knew they didn't have time to waste. "We take him down. Now." Drax appeared from behind a collapsed wall, his massive frame imposing even in the haze. His plasma rifle was charged, ready to fire, but there was a dangerous glint of uncertainty in his eyes. He had never been a man for subtlety, and Riggs was proving a much bigger threat than anyone had expected. "He's playing with us," Drax muttered, his voice low but simmering with anger. "We don't have to chase him like rats. We can just burn this whole place down, force him out." "No," Zara cut in sharply. "We need to find him, not let him slip away again. This ends now." Sarah's voice came through again, more frantic this time. "He's in the reactor room. I can't stop him. The core's unstable. If he detonates it..." Zara's stomach dropped. Riggs wasn't just trying to evade them, he was planning something much worse. He was going to bring this entire place down. "Move! Now!" Zara barked, adrenaline surging through her veins. The four of them sprinted toward the reactor room, their steps heavy in the dust-choked air. Zara's mind raced, running through the limited options they had left. They could fight Riggs, try to subdue him and disable the core, but that was assuming they could even find him in time. Or they could do what he wanted, play into his hands and give him control of the situation. No. She couldn't afford to let Riggs have the upper hand any longer. They needed to finish this, on their terms. As they reached the reactor's main doors, Zara halted, her fingers itching for her blaster. The door was barely hanging on its hinges, smoke billowing from inside. There was no telling what kind of traps Riggs had set up, but the sheer silence beyond the door told her everything she needed to know. "I'll go first," Shar volunteered, his voice quiet but filled with determination. Zara nodded, her hand resting on her weapon. "Stay sharp." Shar moved like a shadow, slipping through the cracked doorway with barely a sound. The others followed in close formation, weapons at the ready. The reactor's central chamber was lit by flickering emergency lights, casting long shadows across the room. The walls were scarred from previous battles, melted steel and burnt circuitry, evidence of the devastation that had occurred here. Zara's pulse quickened as her eyes scanned the room. It was a maze of high-tech equipment, control panels, and wires, but there was no sign of Riggs. The core was in the center of the room, humming with a low, dangerous energy. But Riggs wasn't there. Where the hell is he? Drax growled, looking around. He was starting to lose his patience. The silence was broken by the sudden hum of a power surge. Zara's heart skipped a beat. The reactor core flickered to life, its energy pulsing brighter, more erratically. She could feel the heat building in the room, the air thick with the rising pressure. "Get back!" Zara shouted, grabbing Drax's arm as he started forward. "He's rigged the core." As she pulled Drax away from the center, a voice, cold and almost detached, echoed from above them. "You're too late." Riggs's voice filled the room, reverberating off the walls. "This place is already in motion. You've played your part. Now, you die." Zara's instincts screamed at her, and she dove to the side, just as a torrent of energy surged through the room. The blast nearly sent her off her feet, the heat searing her skin, but she managed to roll into cover behind a steel column. The reactor's core pulsed with violent energy, its core dangerously unstable. "Riggs!" Zara's voice was a mixture of fury and resolve. "You won't get away with this." "Oh, I already have," Riggs replied, his voice closer now, like a shadow creeping in. "You think you're the only one who knows how to make an entrance?" Before Zara could react, the room exploded with movement. Riggs was in the center, standing just inches away from the core, his hand outstretched toward it. The lights flickered again, casting his face in sharp, ghostly shadows. His eyes were cold, no fear, no hesitation. Zara didn't think. She rushed forward, her blaster raised, but Riggs was faster. In one fluid motion, he spun, his hand snaking out to grab her wrist and twist it painfully behind her back. Zara's breath caught in her throat, her arm screaming in protest as he pressed his body against hers. "You think you can just take me down?" Riggs whispered, his breath warm against her ear. "You're nothing. You're just another hunter. Another corpse waiting to happen." Her free hand shot up, landing a solid punch to his side. Riggs grunted, but his grip tightened, dragging her closer to the reactor's unstable core. Zara's mind raced. She could hear Sarah shouting from behind her, but it felt like the world was moving in slow motion. She couldn't afford to panic. She couldn't afford to fail. With a burst of strength, Zara twisted out of his hold, slamming her knee into his gut. Riggs staggered back, just enough for her to regain her footing. "Get away from the core," she shouted to her team. As if on cue, Shar opened fire, his shots precise, hitting the consoles around Riggs, sending sparks flying. Riggs ducked, moving with inhuman speed, but the blast caught him off guard, his shoulder grazing the edge of the reactor. Zara didn't waste a second. She bolted toward him, grabbing his arm and wrenching it behind his back. For a moment, they were locked in a battle of wills, struggling against each other's force, but Zara's determination was greater. With one final twist, she slammed Riggs against the steel wall, knocking the wind out of him. He slumped to the ground, groaning. His eyes narrowed as he glared up at her. "You've won," he said, but there was no defeat in his voice, only something colder. "No, Riggs," Zara said, breathless but firm. "This ends now." With one last motion, she pushed the power down on the reactor's core, disabling the countdown and cutting the energy flow. Riggs's smirk faded. The room fell into an eerie silence. Zara didn't move. The game was over. She had won.